everybody. Today we're going to be talking about ancient Egypt. Now, ancient Egypt is extremely interesting, and if you listen to the end of this episode, I'm going to tell you a crazy story that makes all the things going on with the Kardashians look like child's play. Now, to get started, Egypt is a civilization that spotted up on the Nile River. And if you don't know where the Nile River is, I encourage you to look it up. It's in Egypt. Spoiler alert. I'm sure you've heard of the Nile, as it is the longest river in the world. But it was also a very predictable river, and it flooded its banks annually, which made irrigation and agriculture in Egypt really pretty easy for them. Because their agriculture was pretty easy, they always had a consistent food supply. This meant that they had a really good outlook on the afterlife and the world. They thought that it was pretty friendly. Everything was, it was just like Egypt, but better. And they used their geography to their advantage. So on the north, there's the Mediterranean. They were on the Nile River, there was the Sahara Desert to the south, the Red Sea to the east, and then more desert sort of on the west. So they felt pretty confident in their geography, which led to them having a little bit of a superiority complex. We will see this happen again throughout history in other places. They were the first nation state. They wrote on papyrus, which were little reeds from the Nile that turned into scrolls. They also used hieroglyphics, which I'm sure that you're all aware of. And they're most famous probably for the pyramids, which were not built by aliens. Let me just get that out of the way. Now, going back to the Egyptians' afterlife, they believed that you had three souls: your Ka, your Ba, and your Ak. Your Ka was with you at the tomb. It was essentially your body. It was inseparable from your body until you died. And in hieroglyphics, it's represented by almost like a field goal with like little kind of like hand-looking things on top of your head. Your Ba was a bird with your head on it that could go anywhere. And your Ak was you eternally in the heavens. So what the Judeo-Christian belief of your soul would be is similar to your Ak. Your Ba would return to the tomb each night because it had to feed. And it was really important to have the physical bodies because they did believe in these three souls. Now, you can see how mummification became a really big deal in turn with their religion. Obviously, they didn't want the body to rot, so they had to remove the moist stuff from your body, also known as your internal organs. They would put them in these little things called canopic jars, and then they would take your brain out of your nose, which was, my favorite part. They would wrap you in natron, which was sodium bicarbonate and sodium chloride, also known as baking soda and salt. And they also mummified cats, gazelles, mice, and ibises. There were 4 million ibises found in a tomb at Saqqara, and the ibis was a sacred bird to the god of healing. And if you sacrificed an ibis to him, it would connect you. So if the ancient Egyptians wanted like a family member that was sick to be healed, they would sacrifice an ibis, and that's why they think that there are so many that are mummified. Now we're going to get into the real tea, if you will. The story of Osiris, which is honestly fascinating. So Osiris has this crazy story, and I'm going to set the stage for you. There's Osiris, he's the older brother, and he has a sister named Isis, and she's the older sister. Then they have 2 younger siblings, Nephthys, who's the girl, and Set, who's the boy. All right, so Set and Nephthys, the younger brother and sister duo, get married. And then Osiris and Isis, the older brother and sister duo, also get married, which I know it's gross, but we just gotta move on. So Osiris was a good ruler. He was the first ruler of Egypt. We don't really know if he's real or not. After you hear this story, I'll let you be the judge. but he introduces agriculture to Egypt and wants to spread knowledge. Now, his little brother Set is evil. He's really jealous of Osiris, and so he decides that he's going to plot his murder. The way he does this is he invites Osiris to a fancy banquet and brings out this amazing box, which is a coffin. So he says, I'll give the box to whoever fits in it, like Cinderella, but just in Egypt with a coffin. And Set had secretly measured Osiris. So, of course, this box was going to fit him. So all of his little goonies are trying to get in the box, and none of them can fit because it was measured for Osiris. Then as soon as Osiris gets in it, Set slams the lid, throws it into the Nile, and then Osiris drowns. The coffin floats all the way to Phoenicia, and it grows into a tree with a mummy box in it. And Iris freaks out because she's like, where's my husband / brother? Then the king of Babylonia cuts down his tree and gives it to Isis. He was cutting down trees for his garden or court or something, and then he found one with a coffin in it and was like, oh, I heard that this had happened in Egypt. Why don't I just give it back? So he gives Osiris back to Isis. But before he can complete that task, Seth cuts a dead Osiris up into 14 pieces. I know. Talk about extra. So Isis is freaked out, and she decides that if she finds all 13 pieces, or 14 pieces, everything will be good. She only finds 13 because the 14th piece of Osiris is his penis, which Seth threw in the Nile River, and it was eaten by a crocodile. I am not making this up. So then, Isis goes to heaven and makes him a penis out of clay, and then wraps him in linen. Like a mummy. Do you see where this is going? She then gets bird wings and brings him back. He was never the same. Now he rules the afterlife, and he's connected to rebirth and crops in the spring. So Osiris and Isis decide that it's a really good idea to have a baby whose name is Horus, and he looks like a little hawk. Set is still around, and he hates Horus now instead of Osiris. So Horus and Seth get into this fight where Horus starts killing Set's minions when they turn into animals. And during this fight, Set rips out one of Horus's eyes. Then Horus rips Set's penis off. As you can see, there's a theme going on. The eye of Horus is a big deal. If you've ever seen the Egyptian eye, that's the eye of Horus. It represents healing. And that's where the story ends. Except that it doesn't really end there because a lot of this carries into the weighing of the heart ceremony. Now, it is kind of like your last judgment where they take your heart after you've died and weigh it against a feather. And if your heart isn't lighter than a feather, Ammit will eat it, who is a hippo, crocodile, lion, cheetah. Yes, and I don't know if you know anything about anything, but your heart will literally never be lighter than a feather. They believed that if you had a heavy heart, that meant that you lied a lot, cheated, stole, murdered, I don't know, did all the bad stuff. But if you had a light heart, that was really good. But we all know that that's not really how that works. Then you had to say something called the negative confession, where you said, I have not lied, cheated, murdered, committed adultery, etc., etc. And you had a heart scarab that had a spell on it that says, just keep your mouth shut, heart. Now, a scarab is really important in ancient Egypt. It is actually a beetle, and it's the symbol of eternal life, but it's actually a dung beetle. But that's pretty cool because it represents resurrection. Now, the Book of the Dead is a book of magic, spells, and hymns that you're going to take with you. And then they would do this other thing called the opening of the mouth ceremony, where after you had been embalmed, your family had this weird play, and they would speak spells for you to get into heaven, except you had to speak them, but you were dead, so you couldn't. And then they would act out the fight between Horus and Set. Now you can see how it all comes back around. After that, they had a little thing called the opening of the mouth ceremony. And then they had Shaptis, which were magical servant statues that you would take with you into the afterlife. So that's what I learned about ancient Egypt in my class. I love it. It's pretty cool. Let me know what you know about ancient Egypt in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next episode.